Hello, my name is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
And I am here to talk to you a little bit about the trials and tribulations, the pros and cons of buying broken gear off of eBay. So here's the deal. I recently bought a broken Roland D550 off of eBay. This was probably back in February. And let me show you guys the eBay listing. So guys, here is the eBay listing. Here's the original listing. And you can read the description here. This is a vintage D550 rack mount version of the D50 synth. It did work flawlessly at one time and then just went blank. Still powers up, but nothing else. Someone with some tech skills could bring this back to life. Comes with the original 2-prong power cable. And if we take a look at the picture, well, cosmetically it doesn't look too bad. A little bit of rack rash here, a little bit of rack rash here. Nothing too bad though. You notice, if you look at this picture, you can't see what's going on in the very left-hand corner here. And this is important. So if you look at the symptoms on this Roland D550, you'll see that they sound very, very similar to the Alesis QSR that I fixed a couple months ago. So the screen powers up, or at least shows the backlight, and doesn't do anything else. So I figured there's a pretty decent chance that this D550 is experiencing the same problem, which was just bad capacitors in the power supply. Pretty easy fix, right? So I got the D550, I opened it up, I took a look at the power supply, and no bulging caps. Took a look across the board, no bulging caps anywhere. Well, even if they're not bulging, it doesn't necessarily mean that the caps are all good. So let's test some voltages across the board, across the power supply, various test points across the board. All those tested okay. Very, very strange. What could be going on here? Well, remember the left side that didn't show in the picture? Well, I suddenly said, that's kind of funny. That side that wasn't in the picture is actually kind of dented. That part of the rack rail is a little bit dented. I wonder if this thing got dropped. Maybe I should actually take a look at the display. Maybe the problem is not on the board or on the power supply. Maybe the problem is on the display. And sure enough, wouldn't you know, but yeah, the display board's kinda slightly broken-ish. And by broken-ish, I mean completely broken. There's supposed to be 14 contacts here that are connected to the board. Those are completely gone, completely severed. Well, there's your problem. So these leads, these guys here, got, I believe it was 9 volts of power from the board. So this is what was lighting up the backlight, but because this was severed off, he was getting nothing whatsoever from the board itself, or from the the main part of the D550 itself. So, gosh, what do we do? Fortunately, since the Roland D50 and Roland D550 are so gosh darn popular, there's a lot of information out there on the internet about how to repair these things. And in my specific case, there was a very nice webpage on how to replace a broken D550 display with a modern LED backlit display, which is great. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. So let's talk a little bit about the repair process. So first of all, I'm going to go over to my PC and let me show you guys the webpage that I used, and I'll try to give credit where credit is due. At hacks.slashdirt.org, clever name, there is a nice little write-up on how to replace the LCD on a D550 with a modern equivalent. So the key that they mentioned here is that you need a 2x40 display that is HD 44780 compatible. So if we go on eBay and search for those, you'll see a whole bunch of them. Now, this particular one is a 4x20, so you have to search for the particular 2x40 that we're looking for, knowing that it could either show up in your listing as 2x40 or 40x2. So if you don't see too many results in 2x40, just change your parameters to 40x2. And there you go. Lots and lots of results. So the one that I got is probably one of these guys. So a nice blue LED. At a high level, the process is pretty simple, and I'll show you guys some footage from my repair. I had to unsolder the 14 leads that were going to my original display, or the broken off part of my original display, and solder them onto the new display, which, let me tell you, that was a royal pain in the arse to do that, because there was just no slack on this cable whatsoever. So to get these tiny little disagreeable wires into this new display was a real major pain in the arse. In addition, I had to include a resistor in line because it was just sucking up too much current when I first tried it. Basically, it was sucking up so much current that the rest of the D550 wouldn't power on. I'd get this beautiful blue nothing when I powered it on. So I wired in series I believe it was a 22 ohm resistor, and that was it. Once I did that, the D50 booted up, but it booted up with garbage on the screen, and that's okay. And in fact, if you ever go out and you find either a D50 or a D550 that you start it up and it shows garbage on the display, here's what you do to take care of that. Now, before we continue, you might notice, if you take a look at my D550 as it stands right now, that there's just a little bit of the board showing here. What's up with that? Well, the new display is a little bit fatter, a little bit wider from front to back than the new one. And the glass that covered this just didn't fit over it as it was. Now, I might be able to do a little bit of simple work to maybe get some new spacers in there. That the ones that are in there are just a little bit too wide, perhaps. So I might be able to change out those spacers to get the front glass to fit in. So you were kind of stuck with this for the time being. It gives it a little bit of character, right? No big deal. The display itself works. Everything else works fine. It's just that the fit of this is a little bit different than the original. And that's okay. We can live with that, right? So, getting back to, so let's assume that our display still had garbage on it. How can we deal with that? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to turn Memory Protect off on the D550. So let's go to MIDI. Oh, excuse me. So let's go to Tune. And mine already says Protect Off. When you first start this up, in fact, let's go ahead. Let's just start it up. Power off. Power on. Oh, beautiful display. Love it. Hit the Tune button, and you'll see our Memory Protect is on. So we hit our right cursor to get to Protect. There we go. Memory Protect is off. So let's exit out of this. Now, we want to hit Data Transfer, and we want to do a bulk load. Move the cursor over, and while holding down Data Transfer, hit the Enter button. And do it again. And it will be waiting. If you don't hold down the Data Transfer button, it's expecting a two-way conversation if you don't hold down that button. And when it doesn't get a response, when you start the conversation, when you start dumping data to it, it will fail. It'll say a MIDI communication error. and it will never complete, and you'll be very, very frustrated, and you'll wonder why this bleeping thing isn't working. Well, that's why. Hold down that data transfer button while you hit enter, and all will be bliss. So let's go to our screen, and what we need to do, I'm in MIDI aux right now. Let's go to SysX, and let's load some D550 patches. This is the original bank of sounds, and you can find these online. These are perfectly legal. You can get these from gosh darn anywhere. These are so common. So go to our command window, do send sysx. We'll see some progress on our computer, and we'll see some progress. You see how it's loading, and most importantly, you see how we are not getting a MIDI communications error on the D550. Brilliant. All right, it is complete. Hit exit on your D550, and there we go. There is there's the sound that started it all, the Fantasia sound. All right, so we've got a working D550 now. Fantastic. And we know that we can get gobs and gobs of sounds on the internet, so, you know, putting sounds on this thing, no problem. We have all the sounds that we can possibly handle for a lifetime and many more, perhaps. So, but what if we want to program our own? What do we do? How do we do it? Well, we can go on the front panel of this thing and we can poke around, and you know, we can eventually edit parameters and drive ourselves absolutely bat bleeping crazy trying to edit this thing from the front. No, that's not going to do. That is definitely not going to do. What else can we do then? Well, we've got the BCR 2000, and if you go on the BCR 2000 Yahoo group, there are folks who have very nicely come up with presets that will work on a D550 as well as a D50. And you can even print out templates, and if you're so inclined, you can even print them out so that they will you know, be nice overlays on your BCR 2000. And they work. It's okay. I found for this synth that it's not ideal, but it's okay. It will work, and it's certainly an improvement over trying to poke around on the front of that panel. What we are going to do here is we are going to use a plugin called Ctrlr, Ctrlr. If you Google that, you'll find that they have, it's a VST, and they have presets that folks have generously volunteered for a pretty large number of synths, including the Oberheim Matrix 1000, and we'll go into that in a future video. But for now, you can see here that this looks a lot like the what is it, the PG 1000 programmer that Roland had for the D50, which can, you know, sell for more than an actual D50 itself these days. So what's great about this is that we have kind of full tweakability of all of the available parameters and partials and all that good stuff. It makes a lot more sense seeing it laid out here in this sort of a format than it does trying to pound away at the front panel there. So what can we do? Well, let's take our Fantasia sound. So this, everybody knows this sound. Let me see. Great sound. Great sound. I mean, what else can you say? It's a great sound. So we have our first partial. This consists of 4 partials, 2 upper and 2 lower partials. So let's just take our first lower partial. What does that sound like? So it just adds that little high-end blink at the beginning of the sound. Let me turn all the partials back on. love that aftertouch too. And then we'll go back, we'll just enable our first lower partial. So by itself, nothing, but taken as a whole, you'd miss it if it weren't part of the sound. In fact, let me turn everything else back on and leave that one off. And then put it back in. You miss it when it's not there. So, and that's the beauty of the D50 and the D550, is you could really make some very interesting, subtle sounds on it because of this combination of being able to use some sawtooth and square waves, and then all of these really short PCM samples that you could use and layer everything together, and again you could come up with these really subtle effects that if you're not paying attention, you might not notice the difference, but it's the difference between something sitting really well in a mix and not sitting really well in a mix, and something standing out and something not standing out. And these sounds, they have the ability to really stand out, to the point where they're used so much that they became kind of cliches, but I don't care. I still think they sound good. So what do we do? Let's actually change this partial and hear what kind of an effect it has on the overall sound. So again, this is this first partial is a PCM sample. So let's scroll through the various samples here, and we can see which waveform we're using at any given point in time. So let's change it to harpsichord, for example. It completely changes the sound, just that one little tweak. So let's take a look at our second partial. What does that guy sound like by himself? So there's kind of a bell sound. Let's change his PCM waveform. Turn all the other partials back on. And you've immediately changed the entire vibe of the sound just with one little tweak. Very cool. Let's move on. Let's go to our next partial. So this is the first of our two upper partials. That's one kind of underrated thing about the D50 and the D550 is that it actually had, very nice, warm, analog style sounds. Even just this little... Just that little bit there. Really nice, really smooth, analog style sound with a nice little filter that we can bring in with the aftertouch. Really sweet sound. Well, we can goof with that, and again we have all the normal parameters that again would take forever to access from the front panel, we can access those very easily from Ctrlr here. So let's just let's goof with the cutoff. Yeah, so you can hear that I've now enabled the resonance, and playing with the aftertouch really makes that cut through. So you can hear the making a few tweaks to the resonance and the cutoff frequency, you know, really completely change the timbre of the sound. And again, that's just with one partial enabled. Wow, this thing's fantastic. So let's bring all the other partials back in. Neat, really cool. And let's, last but not least, let's listen to our second upper partial. Interesting, very subtle. So it looks like they've done some scaling, so you can really hear it in the bass notes, but you almost can't hear it at all as we go up the keyboard. And then as I add aftertouch, you can hear it jump the octave. Very interesting. So let's crank up the resonance just to get it to stand out a little bit. Cool. Very cool. Now let's go and add the rest of our partials back in and listen to what our sound sounds like now. Perhaps not the most musical sound in the world, but you guys get a feel for you know, what you can do with this very, very quickly. And again, it all has to do with having a usable programmer. Again, you could do all of this from the front panel of the D550, but it would take you absolutely forever going click, 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 click on the front panel of the D550. And again, if you have a BCR 2000, you could do these sorts of things relatively easily on here, but I found that this layout in the Ctrlr app, or the Ctrlr VST, makes a lot more sense to me than the generic layout that we have on the BCR 2000, which, you know, by necessity kind of needs to be a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. So, guys, I think we're gonna leave it at that for now. And we've got a whole, gosh, I've got a huge backlog of videos to make for you guys. One thing I desperately need to do, I don't know if you noticed in any of the close-up shots of the D550, but I sort of have the leaning tower of synths right now going in my rack here. I've purchased a small, I think it's a 24-unit rack that I'm going to put all of my rack mount synths into. And you know, I'll actually, you know, screw them in and have a nice 1U rack mount PDU, power distribution unit, or power strip that'll go up at the top, most likely at the top, maybe the bottom, but probably the top. And it'll be just this nice sort of self-contained enclosure for all of my rack mount synths. So stay tuned for that. I'll make a quick little video showing you guys how that goes. Otherwise, I mean, gosh, there's just no end of projects. I still have a ESQ1, Ensoniq ESQ1 with a display that isn't functioning. I've spent a lot of time working on that. Not lately, but you know, I have spent a lot of time trying to work on that without much success. So we will get to that at some point. Heck, let's sort of go through the studio and talk about some of the open projects that we have. The Alpha Juno 2 still has a bad key. I need to open that up and fix that. That should be pretty simple. And in fact, if you go on YouTube, there's a nice video of somebody who fixes a non-responsive key on their Alpha Juno 2. So we've got that needs to happen. I have a non-responsive panel button on the Kawai K5. So we need to take care of that at some point. The ARP Solus, I need to figure out why that oscillator 2 can't be calibrated properly. It's either a bad capacitor in there or a bad variable resistor. So we need to troubleshoot that and get that working again. The DX100, which I didn't really touch on too much in my first video, that guy's malfunctioning. It might just be a bad coin cell battery that needs to be replaced. Hopefully it hasn't leaked. So we'll take a look at that, see what we can do. The Kawai K1 has some bad keys. That's a really low priority project, but maybe we'll get to that at some point. Oh boy, what else have we got here? Let me see. You're working fine, you're working fine, you're working fine. The Ensoniq VFX has the dreaded keyboard calibration error. If you guys Google that or look on YouTube, you'll see a whole bunch of folks complaining about that known issue on the VFX. It's a relatively easy fix. We just need to get rid of a bad, crusty old ribbon cable in there and replace it with a handful of jumper wires. Shouldn't be too bad of a fix, so we'll get to that, and that'll take care of the keyboard calibration issue. It's been sort of lower priority because I can still control it from this guy and from this, hey, from those two guys. So so relatively low priority. Oh, what else ain't functioning here? The R3. Oh, I just need to 3D print another topper here, another cap for the selector here, because I already replaced this selector switch on the Korg R3. That worked great. Really haven't talked about the R3 too much, but that's a nice. Talk about an underrated synth. This is an underrated synth. This thing is good. Yeah, daddy-like. Let me see, what else is broken? I don't know. That might be it. K4 is good. The M1 is good. The Matrix 1000 could use a little bit of cosmetic work. We'll work on that at some point. That's pretty low priority because he's otherwise functioning okay. The 8 button is stuck on that, so maybe we'll fix that. So there's no end of projects and videos to take care of. As usual, thank you guys for your comments and for your emails. I'm not ignoring the emails by any stretch of the imagination. It's just I haven't had much of a chance to get around to addressing them, either by sending you guys replies or by making videos of some of the topics that you've requested. I will get to them at some point, I promise. And thank you, and keep them coming, and thank you for watching, listening, and what have you. I think that's it. So guys, thank you very much for watching. You know the drill by now. I'm at facebook.com/thesynthesizeraddict. I'm on Twitter @synth_addict. You can always email me at thesynthesizeraddict@gmail.com. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.